Good evening. My name is Stella Chitralekha Biswas, and I am a faculty in the Department of English, Sarojini Naidu College for Women, Kolkata. I welcome you to the stories of tribal identity and culture that will explore the role of tribal history and tribal representation in history in shaping cultural identity and ideology, curated under TMYS Review, Summer 2023, in collaboration with the Center for Asia Pacific Initiatives, University of Victoria. We are also calling for the submission of essays, poems, and short stories under the project. To know more about the submission guidelines and the project architecture, please visit www.tellmeyourstory.biz. This evening, I consider myself very privileged to be in the company of our esteemed panelists, Dr. Shaktipada Kumar, Dr. Pramod Kumar, Dr. Sandesha Rayapa Garbiyal, and Mr. Mohan Dangaura, who will shortly share their views and insights with us. The topic for today's discussion is gender roles in tribal traditions and heritage under the sub-theme, the role of tribal women in the preservation of endangered languages. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker for the session is Dr. Shaktipada Kumar. Dr. Shaktipada Kumar teaches at the Department of English, Cooch Behar Panchanon Burma University, West Bengal. A folk singer and director of a Chou dance troupe in Purulia, Dr. Kumar is known for his extensive research work in the field of Chou dance performance of Purulia. His research is on the nemo-cultural Chou responses to the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. We are delighted to have you on the panel, Dr. Kumar. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Stella.
Our second speaker for the session is Dr. Pramod Kumar. Dr. Pramod Kumar is a faculty in the Department of Linguistics and Contrastive Study of Tribal Languages, Indira Gandhi National Tribal University. His areas of interest include field linguistics, language documentation, language description, linguistic typology, endangered and lesser known languages of India, language technology, and general linguistics. He is also interested in interdisciplinary research, which includes language, population migration, and prehistory of humans concerning genetics, psychology, archaeology, linguistics, and other related disciplines. It is a pleasure to have you with us today, Dr. Kumar. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Our third speaker for the session is Dr. Sandesha Rayapa Garbiyal. Dr. Sandesha Rayapa Garbiyal, Assistant Professor at JNU's Linguistic Empowerment Cell, specializes in the area of English language teaching. With a PhD focusing on syllabus design for communication skills, she aims to use her experience for running positive, focused, and energized classes. For over a decade, she has gained experience in planning and developing curricula in both English as a second language as well as English as a foreign language scenarios. She is also the project investigator of the first project between JNU and ONGC on the area of documentation and preservation of indigenous endangered languages and cultures. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Sandesha. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Stella. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.
Our fourth speaker for the session is Mr. Mohan Dangaura. Mr. Mohan Dangaura is a PhD scholar at Tribhuvan University. His research covers the cultural and folk performances of the Tharu indigeneity of Nepal. In his study, he interlinks the issue of folk performance, socio-economic rituals, and class construction of Tharu subjectivity in his past and ongoing research. He believes a tribal indigenous group needs education, intellectual vision, and dignified space at the national policy making level to develop their agency. We are very happy to have you with us for this discussion, Mr. Dangaura. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, ma'am. So, hello everyone again.
We will now open the forum for discussion. I would request Dr. Shaktipada Kumar to share his insights on the topic. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Stella, for your wonderful introduction. Thank you, everyone. So, I'll be speaking on the language and culture of the people of Purulia and the way women take part in the preservation of endangered languages. I'll start with a local proverb that goes like "Cholli nach ar bolle geet," meaning walking is dancing and talking is singing. It expresses the way of everyday life of Purulia and its surrounding areas. Purulia is located at the geopolitical and cultural juncture among three states of eastern India: West Bengal, Jharkhand, and Odisha. The everyday life in this culturally assimilated and syncretized region is very different than the rest of the places. Various kinds of cultural forms like song, dance, festival, ritual, proverbial expression, performance, etc., are at the center of articulation of daily needs and desires. These cultural forms provide them a medium through which they communicate even in today's globalized and digitalized world. Be it a traditional ritualistic worship or a worldwide paralyzing pandemic like COVID 19. It is the indigenous cultural forms of various kinds through which the people of the region express and articulate. In a way, the primordial mode of communication, that is speech and gesture or oral communication, using indigenous language is still prominent and predominant. This lecture aims to look at how the people of Purulia, especially the women, communicate their everyday needs and desires through composing new songs or choreographing new dance drama repertoire from their busy, hectic, and mundane life. This lecture aims to inquire about the greater role of songs and dances in their everyday life, like the preservation of endangered languages. They mostly preserve the language through composing different kinds of songs. For example, তোর গীতের নাই আশ করি বাড়ি নামই গীতের চাষ করি. This means do not expect for someone else's lyrics. I cultivate and nurture lyrics in the backyard of the home. These two lines are the refrain of a favorite Tushu song of Purulia. The refrain shows the capability and creative attitude of the people. How far this creative attitude is competent and how it speaks to the cultural legacy of the region will be inquired. This lecture deals with the vast range of song cultures and other performative traditions of Purulia region. Most of the song cultures of Purulia are seasonal songs and dedicated to particular festivals. There are a few song genres that are sung throughout the year, while the other song genres are sung in a specific celebration. Song culture is still one of the predominant communication systems. People even communicate and express their voices through songs, and these songs are the medium through which people of a particular culture share and communicate their day-to-day experiences, happiness, love, sorrows, agony, injustice, and the whole range of human emotions and feelings. Sometimes these songs become a tool to protest injustice and thus provide them a medium to revolt for justice. The song cultures of Purulia are so rich that people compose songs to argue or to abuse someone. This tradition is still very much prevalent and can be observed during a particular festival named Chishu. For example, whenever there is a marriage ceremony, the whole content of the marriage comes out in the form of songs. And these songs are largely practiced by women. They are the singer, and these songs are known as Bihargat, wedding song. Sometimes the episode of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata also come out in these songs. Therefore, we can see that the writing tradition, which is not a kind of, which was not a part of Indian tradition, gets incorporated into the Elithic tradition in the form of song and music. Responses to the Ramayana and the Mahabharata happens in the form of various songs and performances. The themes of these songs and performances are usually from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Most of the performers of these songs and dance do not receive a formal education. For example, there is a singer whose name is Daibaki Kumar, a widow in a village called Fosco. She has not received education formally, but she has composed a song of 16 minutes that actually incorporates the entire Mahabharata, entire 18 purpose of the Mahabharata. But she is not formally educated. What helps her to create such extraordinary composition is the Shruti and the Smriti, remembered tradition. Shruti, that is heart, and Smriti, that is remembered. So these two traditions helps her to compose such extraordinary compositions. During the marriage ceremony, women sing for 3 to 5 days, and one day is reserved for the whole night's song performances. Such traditions are still vibrant in the rural areas, but noticeably they are reducing in number and intensity of the performance due to the onslaught of audiovisual and digital entertainment and advancement. The major Indian compositions like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, Vedas, and Puranas are recitational and are not just meant for writing and reading. The incorporation of writing, which belongs to the lithic tradition, gets absorbed in the Elithic tradition through song cultures of various kinds. The confrontation of lithic and Elithic tradition results neither in a collision nor fusion but incorporation, enveloping the one into within the other, enveloping the lithic into the Elithic tradition. If we look at the kinds of song genres that Purulia has, there are more than 15 different kinds of song genres. We are usually familiar with one particular song genre, that is Jhumor, but apart from Jhumor, there are several other song genres, seasonal songs of in Purulia, like Jawa Git is there, Tushu Git is there, Bhadu Git is there, Bihar Git, which I have already told, Ohira is there, Korom is there. So there are many different kinds of song genres in Purulia. And this would be clear if you give, I mean if you take one or two examples of such songs, then it will be clear how the people of Purulia are actually trying to preserve their language by composing songs after songs using their own language, using the indigenous language. For example, there is a song, it's a Jhumor song, and it would be very difficult to translate. The song goes like, টিপিকি টিপিকি জলে আরে চিটা মাটি গলে, টিপিকি টিপিকি জলে আরে চিটা মাটি গলে, ছলিকে হলি গো, পিছলে হলি গো, পড়ে হলি গো, তোকে ভালে ভালে, টিপিকি টিপিকি জলে আরে চিটা মাটি গলে, টিপিকি টিপিকি জলে আরে চিটা মাটি গলে, ছলিকে হলি গো, পিছলে হলি গো, পড়ে হলি গো, তোকে ভালে ভালে. It would be very difficult to translate the song, as the language which is used in this song is not, is different from the standard Bengali language. So tipik jole means there is a drizzling, it's drizzling, and during that time there is a high chance that you sleep and fall down. So this song actually talks about that kind of a situation where there is drizzling, and people are falling down looking when they are trying to look at someone. And there is another type of song which I have just mentioned, Jhumur song. Jhumur is a song which can be, which is throughout the year, this can be sung. So there is a particular type of Jhumur which are sung during the Chou performances. And if we minutely notice the performances, Chou performances, and in the beginning of Chou performance, there is a special kind of songs which are known as Shobha Bandana Jhumur, which are a kind of invocational songs. So they invoke the audience, they invoke the stage, and they invoke the famous Chou artists. And during these songs, the language that the songs actually use, that will talk about the differences, the cultural differences within the state. The cultural differences between Purulia, the Purulia and the rest of the Bengal. So there's another song. I'll just try to sing a few lines from that song that is different from the main Bangla, and how the people of Purulia are trying to preserve their language through different kinds of songs. So this is another song that goes like, uh, this is composed by one of the very famous Jhumur singer and poet of Purulia, one of my friends, Govinda Mahato. The song goes like, তবে হাইরে পুরুলিয়া জেলার সত মায়ের ছা জনম লেলহা বাবু ভাই আই করে ধুর ধুর ভিনু হামদের গাথের রং আর ভিনু চলা বলার ঢং ভিনু ভাষা ভিনু মোদের সুর. So the song narrates the social discrimination experienced by the people of Purulia. As people of Purulia have different complexion, different walking and talking styles, and different dialect, they are often mistreated by the so-called higher class people, Babu of Kolkata. The song also talks about the cultural excellence of Purulia. It talks about the intrinsic magic of Chou and Jhumor, which has made the people of Purulia proud across the world. It talks about 13 festivals in 12 months like Bandana Tushu, Jawa, Korom, etc. The song also depicts that the culture of Manbhum should be nurtured and preserved. Hence, the language is very, very significant. If you cannot preserve the language, then the entire culture, legacy culture, legacy will die. So therefore, there's a great significance in preserving one's own language and at the same time preserving its culture. Therefore, it can be said that the songs, dances, rituals, festivals, and other embodied performances play a very significant role to articulate the generationally imparted memories of the millennia and helping a specific culture and language to communicate their day-to-day needs and requirements and preserve their language, which may be endangered very soon if proper attention and recognition is not given. The the precautionary measure for the worldwide corona pandemic are also addressed for the locals through these organic modes of cultural forms. And this song is actually is the conclusion of my take on this particular issue. So there's another song that talks about how people should be careful during how they have taken measurement during the time of corona. It goes like শুনো কিছু কথা বলি সবাইকে সবাই থাকো চুপচাপ ঘরে ঢুকে শুনো কিছু কথা বলি সবাইকে সবাই থাকো চুপচাপ ঘরে ঢুকে দাদা যেও না কেউ দাদা যেও না কেউ কোন লোকের পাশে নাইলে ধরে লিবে ও নাইলে ধরে লিবে করোনা ভাইরাসে ও নাইলে ধরে লিবে করোনা ভাইরাসে. So the song says, oh listen everyone, please keep yourself at home and do not mingle and come in contact with people outside, or else you will be infected by coronavirus. So, this is a way. The people of Purulia, and not just the women also. They take part in such songs and they try to preserve the language in this way. Thank you everyone for your attention. Thank you.
Dr. Stella, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, my mic was on mute. Thank you very much for your insightful observations, Dr. Shaktipada Kumar. I would now request Dr. Pramod Kumar to, it appears Dr. Pramod Kumar has accidentally left the session. So I would move on to Dr. Sandesha and request her to take over and share her thoughts on the topic. Over to you, ma'am.
Right. Namaste, everyone. I believe people are joining from various time zones. So, whatever the time zone might be, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. So, as the introduction of mine was already given, so let me begin by asking everybody. I would like to know what people, when they close their eyes, and if I tell them the word tribal, what is it that comes to their mind? What gets conjured up over there? So, I gave you a few seconds. And I believe many people, not all maybe, but there are many. Trust me when I say many. When you ask them, then they'll say, oh, they're primitive. Generally, they see jungle in the background. They see people who are maybe not even attired the way that we would be attired in the cities, scantily attired in certain cases, maybe even leaves for that matter. And then when I ask them, what do you think? Do you think they're educated? I have heard people saying, no, they're not educated. In fact, I remember a person who once told me that he did not have anybody from the tribal community for a tribal project of which he was the project investigator. And I asked him the reason why. And he told me because they don't have the brains to actually be a part of a project. And he had come to me specifically seeking help. So I looked at him. I didn't say anything. I really wanted to give him a piece of my mind. But after I kind of told him things and about how to go about in a project, approximately 10 minutes later, when I told him that I have a project of mine from an indigenous community, and I think that's when realization hit him that the person speaking in front of him was from a tribal community. That's one thing. So, yes, I am from a community that has been stamped as being a tribe or one of the tribes of India. Now, this will lead to my second part, which is what exactly do you think is the meaning of tribe? And what do you think is the meaning of indigenous? And where do you see the difference or the similarities? Again, take a few seconds. Well, if you look at the root word of the word tribe, tribe itself comes from, if you guessed it correctly, tri, three. And this is from the Germanic tribes when it was three parts. I don't exactly remember the three different tribes. And that is from where this entire root word of tribe came about. The second part, which I want to talk about, is indigenous. Now, when you talk about indigenous, indigenous are basically communities who are native to the land. And the root word comes from endo, which is in two parts endo, which is basically Greek for being within. And then you have the genus part, wherein it means giving birth. So it's native to the land. That is indigenous. So, yes, there is a possibility that people who are tribal, they could be in they no people who are indigenous could be tribal, but at the same time it is not necessary that the person who is tribal will be indigenous. Please remember what I'm saying right now. um, then let me kind of tell you a little bit about the entire topic that I've been asked to speak about the role of tribal women in the preservation of endangered languages. Interesting title. Why women? Why not men? Put everything on the women, nothing on the men? No, I believe it's a responsibility of both the men and the women. But yes, women do play a special role. And why only for indigenous or tribal communities? It is for everybody, every community. And it's very easy to say, tribal women, you're educated, so after your education go back, get married to somebody from your community. It is not easy. It is very difficult for somebody who's come into the city to kind of go back and adjust. Everybody does not find it easy to find somebody who might be thinking in the mutual lines as what they are thinking in. So that's one thing. So putting the blame on a woman of a particular community, whether tribal or non-tribal, to be passing on the language and culture, I particularly wanted to point that out, that I'm not here to enforce on that. But yes, if possible, if possible, do give a chance to somebody from your community. Try to understand the people. Try to be able to, maybe not necessarily you yourself being from the community the way I was. I did not know my own language and my own culture because I was born and raised abroad. But slowly and steadily, because of the fact that my parents made me stick on to my roots, I was able to think about going back to my community. And to a certain extent, when I found the right person, or rather, when the right person found me, I went ahead with that match. Now, let me show you a bit about the community that I'm talking about. Can I request Stella to kindly share my PPT? All right. So if you look at this particular, I'm sorry, unfortunately, I'm not able to open up the slides for some reason, technical reason. But if you look at this, I've created a collage of 5 different pictures. The first one is the animal, which is there in our place, in our community, and it's called a Joe. And it's a combination of 2 different animals. And then in the second, something that has always kept me connected to my roots. So when I was born and raised in Dubai, my mother, of all our entire attire, she brought these shoes with her. These shoes were known as babch. And this is, I used to wonder, what is this? Why is she bringing this here? But then my mother told me this is something that is so important. This gets passed on from mother to daughter, generally, from mother to daughter. And nowadays, you don't even find it. And this is something that is worn over the entire Himalayan belt in Himachal Pradesh, in Uttarakhand, in certain parts of Northeast, in Jammu and Kashmir, in the Ladakh region, and they might have a different name. In the third, what you see is something that we offer for our, whenever we have our pujas, whenever we have our prayers, our weddings, our birth ceremonies, our death ceremonies. Nothing gets complete without such important things. And then this, the fourth picture is me wearing my attire, and there is a particular dance that we do, and this is me in that particular mode. And the last part is a view from my home, from my father's home, right? All right, next slide, please. Is it possible for you to do that? Oh, okay. All right. So I'm going to get into that mode. 1 second. Just let me know if you can see it. Can you see the next slide, Stella?
Yeah, ma'am, we can see that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So now the next slide is just something that I've got from the net, which is it's the Indian census of 2011, 120 languages of India. So let me tell you, for people who don't know, there are 6 language families in India. All right. The first one of the ones which has the major portion, that is like 78% of the population of India, which is the Indo-Aryan language family, under which you have Sanskrit, Hindi, Bengali, even the language that was just now spoken and beautifully sung by Dr. Shaktipada, even that comes under Indo-Aryan, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have Assamese, you have Nepali, you have Odia, and Marathi, Gujarati, and many, many more. And then after that, you have Dravidian. And within the Dravidian language family, which is approximately around 19%, let's take it up to 20. You have Tamil, which is the oldest, Malayalam, which is the youngest. You have Kannada, you have Telugu, and then you have few other indigenous languages and tribal languages there. And in third, you have approximately around 2%. It's actually 1.8 something percent. Let's take it up to 2 maybe. That is basically the Tibeto-Burman languages, under which you have, and if you look at the spectrum, you'll actually see there are many, many languages listed out there. And there is an interesting thing. People say with every 3 kilometer language changes, right? So this is where you are at the plains. When you're at a mountainous region like the Northeast Hills, or when you are in the Himalayas, I think the variations are even much, much more, within or maybe less than 3 kilometers, because the mountains, they are so treacherous. It's so difficult nowadays. Yes, with the blasting of the mountains and the creation of the roads, things might be much more easier, much more smoother, easier access. But at that particular moment in time, it was not so, and it was very difficult. All right. Now, the community I was talking about, it's called Rang. I belong to the Rang community. And the Rang, they basically, let me just. So this is, as you can see, the map of India. And here you have Uttarakhand. And right at the border, in Uttarakhand, you can see at the border, you have the junction of Nepal and China, and basically the Tibet Autonomous Region. And then over here, if you look at this, this is the town called Dharchila, which is in the Kumaon region, district Pithoragarh. Can you see this river? This river is known as the Mahakali River, which when it goes down, it's called as Sharda River. And this river divides our area into 2 countries, which is India and Nepal. And the community, Rang community, stays on both of the sides, both in India and in Nepal. This is how Dharchila was years ago, decades ago, all right, centuries ago maybe. And the Rang community are one of the few communities in the world to be practicing transhumance migration. Transhumance migration is migration not at just one particular level, it's at an altitude. And you have two homes. You have one home when it is like hot, you're up, and when it's cold, you come down, because we are people from the glaciers. We are the ones who will tell the people around the world that the glaciers are melting, which my mother has been constantly telling me, because she was one of those few people who would be actually migrating from their childhood till the time she went somewhere else for her education. This is known as Himalayan gold. This is known as Kira Jadi. In Latin, in the actual words, it is cordyceps. This is supposed to be, one piece is supposed to be more expensive than even gold. All right. And this is found in our region. And this is used for a lot of things. In fact, there's a lot of projects going on about it. So I'm telling you a little bit about the area so that you will understand a little bit about the people and the language and the importance of, so many other things that are associated with it. This is what I was trying to tell you. On the left side, you have India, right side, you have Nepal, and behind those mountains, those white peak, snow peak mountains, you have China. This is the project that Stella was talking about. This is the ONGC sponsored CSR project with TRC, which got covered in the papers. Initially, it got covered in the local papers. Then it got covered in the Times of India, in Hindustan Times. And this particular article was read by the Prime Minister of our country, who then mentioned about the project in his 2019 Man Ki Baat, where he actually spoke about language and culture and how important it was to preserve it. And the next day, again, Times of India said, feeling motivated with the story, PM refers to toy article in Man Ki Baat. This was in Hindustan Times. This is me where I was invited for an international conference to talk about it. And if you can look at this particular picture, you can see so many people in the first row, and you wouldn't know where they are from. There's somebody from China, there's somebody from Japan, there's somebody from Peru. Yes, Stella?
If I could interrupt you for a moment, the slides are not moving forward.
Okay,
It's
where are
stuck
you
on one
stuck?
particular slide.
Which one has it stuck on?
Yes, it has moved on now.
Okay,
We
all
can
right.
see the picture now from the cutout article. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm going ahead. All right. Then this is there are people who talk about, how the networks, they're not working and everything. So this was also covered, how Indians at the borders have to use the networks of the neighboring country Nepal to actually talk, and also for emergency purposes. Things have sorted out right now. This is the particular bridge I was talking about. The word bridge in my language, it's called Chum. Now I'm going to tell you something. My language, when you say chum, chum could mean wool. Chum could mean let's go, like chum, like kuchi demo. And chum means bridge. So depending on the context, depending on the tone, it would change. The meaning would change. All right. So it is tonal. Over here you can see that ship herding is one of the things. The wool is one of the things that we were majorly into. We were trading. We were people who traded not with just in India, but in China, in Tibet. And the Britishers, we had a very important role. The Britishers required us to connect them. Well, they were not able to connect with the Tibetans, because the Tibetans, they were not ready to do business with anybody who looked different, who ate different, because our community was quite similar to theirs. So they kind of helped us, and they told us, and they were easily able to communicate between the British and the Tibetans. We were able to help them out. And then this is again Panchachuli. So basically there are three valleys. Dharma is one of the valleys. Bianco Valley is known as Byas also, because that's where Byas Rishi was supposed to have been there. And then you have Bangba, which is known as Chaudas, because of the 14 villages. This is how our deities actually, this was what we had as our mandir, just a simple mandir with stones. But now people have, obviously, with the roads coming in of the roads, they made it much more elaborate, the way that you have city mandirs. But this is the beauty about, when you actually look at certain places, and people say that these people are primitive. But honestly, for people who think that people in remote areas are primitive, I'd like to actually ask you a question. How do you get your food? How do you cook your food? You go to your kitchen, maybe you light a fire or on the stove, or maybe you click off a button. Some people don't even light a matchstick or a lighter, they just click a button. But it's not so easy. If we ask you to make the fire, to create it, and to actually get your food, not from a supermarket, but by actually maybe farming or hunting, would you be able to do it? I don't think so. So I think then you need to ask yourself, who exactly is primitive? All right. These are the dance forms. Let me now, I think we are already running short of time, and when the questions will come in, I'll then maybe handle it accordingly. Let me tell you a couple of other important things that I want to talk about. uh, when people come to our area to collect data, all right, linguistic data, like how Dr. Shaktipada, Dr. Mohan, and even Dr. Pramod will tell you, there are a lot of people who have these preconceived notions. They come with a list, correct? Dr. Shaktipada is already nodding his head. You come with a list and you say, oh, what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of that? What is the meaning of thank you? What is the meaning of love? And if I tell you that there is no word for thank you in my Ranglo, in my language, then you'll be like, oh, no word for thank you? You people don't even know how to thank people? You're so primitive? In reality, look at it the other way around, that we are a community that does not even believe in saying thank you as a word, because it is expected that as a human being that you get help from someone and that you help the other person. And the best thing that we get is the person who receives the help, he will say, Naga bidale. Naga bidale. Naga means yours, bida means good, le means happen. That means good happened to you. And that is beyond a thank you for me. That comes straight from the heart. So, who is primitive? It's so easy to declare somebody primitive. You say something like, I love you, मैं तुम्हें प्यार करता हूँ. If you like that, I love you, मैं तुम्हें प्यार करता हूँ, we don't have words like मैं तुम्हें प्यार. We don't have a प्यार शब्द. Okay? What we have something is I jigger shishole. So that means shisho is heart. So obviously, if someone is telling you that you're his or her heart, then that means that the person is very close. So certain emotions can't be classified. There are ways to express them. And do not expect that what food you eat, we will eat. Just like we don't expect you to eat what we eat. It is very easy to tell people that, oh, everybody should become a vegetarian. Trust me, come to my area. You will see my area. You will see that there is a particular altitude after a few villages where you will never see anything green. All you will see is white or brown. Okay, so there you'll be very lucky to even get something to something to eat out there. I know it for a fact. And only when women, they take the time, they take the effort along with their husband to take their children along to those areas, then only are you able to show them your culture. And that is how they understand how language and culture are interrelated. So this is coming back to your title, that the role of women in tribal, tribal women specifically in preservation of indigenous languages. It's very easy to say that being in the city, I teach my two daughters about my language. It's not like that. For me to actually tell them about it, I need to show them. I need to show them why life is difficult out there, why we don't get things at the touch of a button. How is it that indigenous or tribal community people are actually people who are there, who are protecting the environment? We don't hunt every time. There are moments when we don't hunt. People who are near the sea, they don't fish every time, because there is a time when the fish are breeding. The same way, there is a time when the animals are breeding, when the young are being born. We do not hunt then. So there is a time. We have the hunting time, we dry the meat, and we eat the meat accordingly. So these are few things that I wanted to share. I hope I haven't crossed, I might have already crossed. So when the questions come in, then we'll talk further ahead. So my fellow speakers can take over. Thank you so much, Dr. Stella.
Thank you very much for sharing your vital observations, Dr. Sandesha. I would now request Mr. Dangaura to take over and share his thoughts on the topic.
Okay, so thank you, ma'am. So before I start my presentation, so I would like to start with one famous quote from Nelson Mandela. So Nelson Mandela says, like, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. So I believe that everyone must have read this quote, and which is quite popular. So, hello and namaste to everyone again. This moment is significant to save, discuss, and analyze the role of tribal women in the preservation of endangered languages. So, when we connect tribal things, we automatically assume identity, agency, and the preservation of the legacy of more humans. However, the problem has been in promoting, celebrating, and continuing the tribal performances, indigenous lifestyle, and their rituals. Modernity, as a result of urbanization, industrialization, and the pace of an ever increasing population, has resulted in tremendous reductions in tribal performance, whether of men or women. I believe I was about 10 or 11 years old when I was dragged to my ancestral village with my parents for occasional visits. The bus, which takes just 1 hour to reach the place nowadays, must have taken 4 hours at that time. Of course, there were no buses at that time, and the public was small. As we headed towards the village, the bus stopped at 3 to 4 stops to pick up and drop off the passengers. Nowadays, I couldn't imagine taking such public transportation and devoting so much time to a 1 hour journey. Finally, as we dropped at our pocket station, I noticed a dark, deep, and wide river flowing just under the bridge on which I was stepping and wondered which direction to step down from the high road. My mother, without speaking, climbed down the right side of the road where I hardly noticed any clear road as it felt to me like standing in front of the hidden secret door of some treasure cave. Everywhere around me was lush green and full of tall trees, inviting me to get lost in them. During my childhood, I used to hate walking long distances, or maybe they would just feel very far even if they were not. After 20 minutes of walking and listening to all the trifles of father and mother, we were victorious in that jungle's airy green. Alas, the same big river was now bending right in front of me, grinning at me and implying that there was no way forward without crossing it. I clutched the wrist of my mother's hand and stepped onto the very muddy, sandy, and sinking bottom of the river. Finally, we swam across that too, and after walking for, I guess, 15 to 20 minutes, we reached our destination. When we reached our destination, I could see my parents disappearing into the houses of our relatives for their usual tonics and warm meetups. I was greeted with the cooked rice as I sat beside my maternal uncle, aunt, and other relatives in a circle like mini parliamentary session. That was not the event that surprised me. Rather, it was the later cuisine served on various dry and green leaf balls, pork, dry fish, dry vegetables of radish leaves, especially grown local potatoes known as tharu alu, so which is a species of potato known by the name tharu, and other green vegetable items. Nowadays, I believe the number of food items I was provided were not because I was new to them after a long time, but because they were easily available to my village relatives. If you go now, they will make very effort. They will make every effort to welcome you with a variety of dishes, but they will settle for the best solution and the most universal dish for us, which is everyone knows like broiler chickens nowadays. This reference is not to scoff at the difference in ritual, but rather to highlight how modernity has shattered our very roots and identities with its single stroke inventions, whether in technology or food. The same women of the village who used to acquire the right to cultivate their gardens, fields, and forests have been denied their rights. The same women who would live harmoniously with forests and rivers, fishing and collecting wild fruits and fodder, were robbed of their tranquility and agency, let's say, are robbed of their tranquility and agency and the Amazonian world of their own knowledge and freedom. During their tour of the jungle and rivers, they used to hymn with nature, with their melodies and tunes synchronized with the breezes and peaceful environment of nature. They would use their own invented languages and rhythms to call each other in every action and companionship. When talking about the women of the Tharu community, they would communicate using the rhymes of a song called of songs called Mangar, Sakya, and Sajana. As I was eating, my parents and relatives were having their own conversation, which was not of my interest at that time. But one thing I noticed how I was uh, notice was how after each peg of drink, one of my aunts would raise the motion with her sadhana. So where typically they narrate their memories and experiences in the rhymes that are about their daily lifestyles and authentic experiences of the individuals. My aunt's motion was addressed by other aunts and even uncles in the same way. So either by narrating similar experiences or with a befitting reply sometimes. I don't say like I remember their narratives after almost a decade when I am here remembering them, but I found all these when I started my research and the folk performance of my community. I learned that it was not their wines and drinks that they used to express their pains, griefs, and achievements, if they had any at that time, because to call them achievers would be to call them very selfish and individualistic. As tribal people rarely consider individual success and American dream type goals in their holy land in the past. What mattered to them was all the gossip and kids living together and having daily rhythmical seminars with locally brewed champagnes. Nonetheless, we are witnessing rapid change today. I can rarely find my same aunts and uncles singing the rhymes and looking after the fruits and vegetables in the wild while making their cattle graze in the jungle. I had not found the very mischievous attitude of some morally corrupt modern people who would just like to cut down all the trees of the jungle and let all the human excreta flow into the pristine and holy rivers of our world. I find the same river depressed and almost dead to my arrival now when I travel across it once a year. The water around her has forgotten the serene melody, and they only carry the sewage, dirt, and non-biodegradable waste that has caused uh, her voice to lose its melodious and soothing tone. She seems upset with me as I am no longer there to stare at her and be afraid of her depth and dark sanity. I feel she has gone into a deep slumber where she does not scare me with the folk river ghosts and mystical giants residing at her bottom. How lonely and wretched she must have felt when all the women who used to be angry with her because they couldn't catch any fish, crab, or gongi river sails stopped visiting her and playing with her currents, reverberating the beautiful melodious songs. The poetic muse, those women humming and cursing her with the dignity for hiding all their fears, said, "Oh God, how lonely she has become." Were they there, she too would be here. But the women were robbed of their power, of their jobs, of their dignity, of their liberty, of their voice, and of their own route. The nature that inspired them, the nature that gave them a voice and melody despite their illiteracy, the nature that taught them soul liberation and tranquility, all died, vanished, and dehydrated, taking with their voices liberty and harmony. In each of their folk performances, they would draw inspiration from nature. They would create patterns from her, they would choose the colors from her, and they would dedicate the whole performance to her, thinking that they were not separate from her. Her children would watch as she stood by them. Her co-partners would sing and dance together with her, and there would be no dualism found in the movement of transcendentalistic performance. All would become one, and all would become one. The cycle would continue, and the beats of mandals, drums, and jhalars would continue to transfer the physical mortals to their transcendental being. Nature's own mystic creation of her own inner voice and chords would be simulated by the emotions and energy created in their own code of words and phrases. The morals imposed on her caregivers and dwellers would be the pinnacle of this metaphysical universe's greatest dance. Those women who enjoy the domesticity of their rural life are found to be weaving quilts, baskets, bamboo fans, and umbrellas while humming the songs and ballads they know in their own mother tongue. I found them singing the compassionate song for the entire gender as they bid farewell to the newly married woman leaving her home. The time they spend in and around their dwellings, which are basically surrounded by lush nature, actually provides them with the serenity to create and compose a melody, which we rarely find in the modern people as they are forced to choose resorts and nature homestays for the same thing. When I was still in my village with my parents, whom I found completely absorbed in the spray, I noticed that the more my relatives would drink, the more serious they would be, and they would constantly sing the songs to express their ooze and glee. A woman in a village has more access to nature in her surroundings. She is familiar with every nook and plant that can be useful to her because she spends the majority of her time caring for her livestock. She has to know every plant surrounding her home and the village to make sure that her cattle never go hungry. Through her common sense, she realizes the sense of deep ecological meaning and strives to preserve and learn more about her surroundings. The crucial thing is that she does remember the indigenous knowledge and utilizes the same indigenous knowledge to store history, unknown knowledge, and the ritualistic performance for the rest of the world. A tribal woman sings in a language that has almost been obscured even to me. As a person from a tribal community, nowadays I regret not following those hidden codes and the conduct of my own society. The changes that modernity has not only brought but has also compelled tribal women to choose some sort of economically worthwhile activity have resulted in a significant reduction in the strict and proper observance of their culture and ritual. Thus, it can be seen from a double-edged sword perspective where on the one hand they need some economic activities to sustain their livelihood, and on the other hand they have to seriously engage in the community forums for the collective agency to promote their indigenousness. As far as I believe, talking about the roles of tribal women has to be primary, but then the concerned authorities, government departments, and different development agencies too have to be equally concerned, serious about promoting the tribal culture while making these women crucial parts of not only the financial economy but also the social human economy. Moreover, tribal knowledge and practices should be seen from the perspective of spiritualism. Because tribal cultures teach us to live in harmony with nature and to reject materialism, their way of life can serve as a model for modern people to practice humanity. As far as I am concerned regarding the role of tribal women, I strongly believe that they must be provided with basic education. It will give them the agency to translate their native knowledge into some popular and universal language so that it will be preserved. Moreover, the community welfare agencies must help them build teams in each village so that they can discuss, practice, narrate, and note down the lyrics of their folk dances and songs with the help of bilingual moderator. Such programs must be concerned, if not every day, then at least once a week or according to their provisions. And once again, the main thing is that they must be provided with the financial incentives even if they are inactive. The good thing that we can observe nowadays is how the tribes themselves have become more active and are conducting such events as fairs, melas, and homestays adventures to promote the and constantly practice their rituals. In such programs, we often find men completely out of the focus, be it dance or any other performance, whereas we find women groomed in fancy traditional outfits, performing the dances and songs, and being the focus of the tourist. Again, it could be argued that women have more freedom in Adivasi societies, but my concern is that they should not be the sole focus of the attention. While Adivasi cultural groups have done like tremendous work, most of them still lack proper addresses and recognition at the national level. They still don't have the medium to compete with other regional performances such as Punjabi, Haryanvi, and South Indian dialects. So the basic thing they require is to sophisticate their approach to recording and digitalizing them. Because we now have easy ways to record our voice and agency, I believe all we need to do is convert the caliber into eminent celebration, like we are doing here right now. So, like four of us are here, and four of us have different perspective, and we are digitalizing it for the others, or for the foreign students or the scholars. Meanwhile, they can use diverse social media platforms as well to digitalize, advertise, promote, and preserve the uniqueness of their native language, dress, and performance. So while discussing these ideas, I was reminded of like Sam Sundar, a very GLS social worker in the Adivasi movement who hosts the YouTube program called Maybe Bharat. I believe he's one of the few who passionately visits different tribal states and areas of Indian subcontinent to gather vital information about the Adivasi way of life, performance, and overall unique lifestyle. While tribal women keep transferring that knowledge to their younger ones, they must update themselves for the digitalized world with the help of their educated relatives and form many social clubs through which they can reach the government's authorities. So I again want to stress the idea that the tribal members themselves, not only women, have to build the agency for media, as it has been quite clear that agency building through media is easy to disseminate and popularize. So, thus, assisting tribal women in overcoming financial constraints and empowering them through the formation of social clubs with the constant and overwhelming assistance of development agencies can greatly contribute to the preservation of their language and agency. So, this is all about today's presentation. So that's what I believe the tribal women's culture, and then like tribal women's tribal language should be preserved. So thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your invaluable observations, Mr. Dangaura. Unfortunately, it appears Dr. Pramod Kumar will not be able to rejoin the session due to irresolvable technical issues, which is why we will move on to the question and answer session. My first question is for Dr. Shaktipada Kumar. Do you feel mother language based education may go a long way in preserving indigenous heritage?
Thank you, Stella. Thank you for the wonderful question. I certainly believe that mother language based education may go a long way in preserving indigenous heritage. And I'm answering this question from my own experience. I mean, in order to know one's own heritage, I think there is no substitution to the mother language. Therefore, the if the teaching learning process is done using the mother language, at least in the elementary level, then there is a chance to impart cultural memory through mother language in a more significant way. Language itself is one of the greatest heritages through which we connect to our roots. Hence, I wholeheartedly feel that mother language based education may go a long way in preserving indigenous language, indigenous heritage.
Thank you for answering that. My next question is for Dr. Sandesha. You yourself are a member of the indigenous Rang community of Uttarakhand. Please enlighten us with your experience, for that matter, the experience of the women members of the community in the preservation of your language, Ranglo. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, which is one of the endangered languages.
All right. Thank you for the question, Dr. Stella. So I just want to kind of like there were a couple of things that what Dr. Dangaura said, and even now when Dr. Shaktipada answered, that I will also kind of like talk about. Is that it's quite interesting because I was, as I told you, I was born raised somewhere else, away from the community, and most of the people now in the next generation, they're all like my children. They're born away from the community. They're growing up over here, and for us, we want to be connected to our community. We want to know. In fact, till the age of 21, till the time I did not do my I didn't get into my masters in JNU, I thought Hindi was my mother tongue. Whereas Hindi is not my mother tongue. My mother tongue is Ranglo. And the reason why I never mentioned Ranglo as being my mother tongue was because I was not fluent in my own mother tongue. So I thought you have to be fluent in your mother tongue. And that is one of the first myths that was busted when I entered my class and when I had this class on field methods, where our professor told us that no, mother tongue is your ethnic identity. Whether you know it fluently or not, it doesn't matter, but that is your mother tongue. And that was a major, major eye opener for me. So, for others also who are listening to me right now, maybe they'll also change their mind about it. The second thing I want to tell you is that interestingly, when you go to people who are there in the remote areas and you ask them that you want to learn in your language, they'll say, "नहीं, हमको English या हिंदी में सिखाओ." Okay, that is important for them. क्योंकि नौकरी से हमें उस नौकरी को हमें रंगलों से नहीं मिलेगा. I went to Chhattisgarh for a 3-day international conference. Nicely, the tribal people, after the entire day's conference, they were on the stage, they were dancing and everything. On the third day, I was lucky that I happened to go to the parking lot to take something from the taxi. And there I saw that they were preparing for the dance. So I started talking to them. I started dancing with them. While I was talking to them, I asked them that in your area, do you have a school? And they said yes. I said, okay, is your school in English medium or in Hindi medium or in what medium is it? They said it used to be in English medium, but now the medium has changed. Now, so I said, is that good? What do you think? And surprisingly, they said, no, we like English medium. I said, why don't you want? And these are women, these are tribal women, and they are saying, no, हमारी बोली हम खुद सिखाएंगे पेट से सीखता है बच्चा आई सेड पेट से कैसे सीखता है एंड दे सेड नो हम बोलते हैं वो सुनते हैं और वो सीखते हैं एंड दैट इज व्हाट इज द प्रिजर्वेशन ऑफ इंडिजिनस लैंग्वेज दैट इज द रोल ऑफ अ वुमन अ मदर she is the one. It is not your documentation which is going to preserve a language. Who are you documenting for? You're documenting to keep it like this, the books behind me. The actual preservation is when the culture, when you make us indigenous people proud of the fact to say in front of a forum like yours, to say that yes, I belong to an indigenous community. I'm not going to change my identity. I can't even change the way I look. People used to think, looking at me, that I'm from Northeast, I'm from Assam, I'm from anywhere. People from Uttarakhand don't know that there are people who look like me, who look like me as in having Oriental looks. Why? Because they haven't been exposed to that culture. So now this is something that is to be noted, that when you're talking about the media coming or people coming, when you talk about people coming to our areas, asking us to share our knowledge, our indigenous knowledge, it's also the way that they're presenting which is important. The way that, are you giving us respect? We are sharing our culture with you. Are you respecting or are you making a joke of us? That also has to be noted. Can you go to Haryana, this Gurgaon or Noida, and record telling them, oh, we want to see how you cook your food? And then the way that you joke about it, do you think that they don't understand? That is the same thing I'm talking about. When Dr. Shaktipada, Dr. Mohan, when they were talking about how indigenous tribal people are so, humble, they open up their hearts and everything. Let's not misuse that openness of their communities as something else. That is the message I would like to give to you through this forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering that, ma'am. My next question is for Mr. Mohan Dangaura. You have conducted extensive research on Tharu people's ways of life and how they have successfully managed to sustain the aesthetics of their ethnicity while coping with the challenges of modernity. In this context, what are your findings on the preservation of their languages and dialects? Are there any specific community-based efforts in this regard where women play an important role?
Okay, so thank you, ma'am. I would like to answer in short. So they have been displaying their cultural performances in various programs, fairs, exhibitions, and national and international literature festivals. So the community has started to work with the concept of establishing a Tharu museum and memorial in every ward and village council, where folks will be assigned like specific roles within their group. The assigned group is in charge of hosting the guests and performing for them during their visit. The project has already started in some villages. Similarly, Tharu women have begun to design their ethnic dresses with a great deal of creative freedom in order to attract women who prefer designer clothes such as modern nehenga. So, if we like translate it into Hindi, common popular Hindi, then it is inspired. We can like see that the nehenga that Tharu or we say is said lehenga in Hindi language, and our culture, if we relate it with like it is kind of it looks like it is inspired from Rajasthani culture and their dress and other cuisines and attires. So in marriages and other celebrations like Tharu, men and women prefer to wear their ethnic attire. So Tharu women are considered an important part of their folklore as well, be it their dance performances or marriage ceremonies. Especially in marriage ceremonies, the women perform a type of song known as mangar to bid adieu to the newlywed girl. So when a newlywed girl is leaving her house, or her parental home, and now she has to be like instructed. She has to be given some guides and some lessons or some life style. Teaching. So the elderly women, so they perform a kind of a song called mangar, and in their song, so they teach her, and then they try to guide her about her future life. Similarly, there is a ritual only for women during every summer of the year, when all the women of a village leave their house early in the morning and go to a nearby forest to enjoy a picnic type environment. And this process is known as bhajar in the Tharu community. So during this bhajar, like all the women of a village, they leave their houses early in the morning, and then they go to nearby forest, and then they enjoy a day there. And they try to like, it's a kind of occasion for them to to have their sense of empowerment. So celebrating like Astimki is also there. Astimki means like Krishna Janmastami. So Krishna Janmastami Astami, in a sense, has been localized by Tharu people, and it is in the community known as Astimki. And women like keep fasting for the whole day for the better lives of their husbands, and end it the next morning after performing all the rituals at some holy riverside. So for Tharus, Isru and Jasu were the first man and woman of human civilization, and this is how they try to, Tharu women have been assigned some of these specific roles with the men of their community. So thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for answering that, Mr. Dankora. My next question again is for Dr. Kumar. Could you talk a bit on the importance of memory in the preservation and transmission of indigenous languages, as opposed to hegemonic forms of documentation that carry massive colonial baggage? Do you also think that women are at the helm in such contexts?
Okay, well, it's a very, very pertinent question. Thank you, Stella, for the question. Thank you for asking this. I mean, I've been working on this particular aspect since a decade and more. And before we understand our tradition and culture, we have to, I think, understand the cultural differences between the West and India. And memory obviously has a very, very significant role to understand these cultural differences. In case of West, Memory is largely and predominantly a surrogated one in the form of library, museum, archive, and the whole range of repository systems. But memory in Indian cultural tradition is predominantly embodied memory, which Sandesha madam was also talking about. It's in the body. I mean, the memory is within the body, where the human body is a storehouse of such cultural memories. Embodied memory is extremely significant for the preservation of indigenous languages, as opposed to the hegemonic form of documentation that carry a massive colonial baggage. And to answer the second part of the question, I of course think that women are at the center in such contexts. If the language is not preserved, the culture, the heritage, and tradition can never be preserved. When a language dies, then the whole cultural legacy, experience of thousands of years of a particular community dies. Therefore, women who are the first language trainer for any child, for any kid, is at the helm of such context. So I definitely feel that women play a very significant role in this case.
Thank you very much for
I,
answering that, Dr. Kumar. My next question is for Dr. Sandesha. Studies have shown that indigenous women, as culture keepers and archivists of ancient languages, have proven their ability to be powerful community influencers. How far have such positive developments effectively changed the national discourse on socio-cultural and gender equity in India?
All right. First of all, I have this thing about this term ancient languages. If you Google about ancient languages, it gives you a list of couple of languages. It'll talk about Tamil and Sanskrit from our own country, and from other countries, you have other languages. But these are languages. What makes you say that they are definitely they are pretty old? They're like thousands of years old, 2,000 years of old. You can actually find those writings somewhere. But those are people who have writings. What about languages like mine which don't have writings? So if you don't have writings, then that means what? That our language might be even older than theirs, or somewhere around theirs. So that is something that also has to be noted. My language is an oral language, like most of the Northeast languages of our country and many Tibeto-Burman languages. Because at that point in time, I think the way life was, it didn't give you that much time. You had to look for shelter, you had to look for food, you had to look to protect yourself, you had to be migrating from one place to the other. It was so cold, it was a lot of things. Okay, so there was no time to sit down and think of, oh, how do I kind of make these symbols and signs. There was that need was not required. In fact, when you're talking about language and culture, in my community, when we used to have weddings, our weddings used to go on for 4 or 5 days, where we would have, when, and as I told you, the villages, they were far away, they were like kilometers away, and in the mountains, having even 10-15 kilometers takes you like ages. All right. And when they would come and they would be there, like the bridegroom's village would come to the bride's village, and there, according to our customs, the older lot, they would be sitting, and they'd be throughout the night, they'd be drinking, they would be eating, and they would be dancing and singing. And when I'm talking about singing, it's not like songs which are like, the kind of songs that you pass on, the way that Dr. Shaktipada was singing beautifully. We had songs which are made on the spot about this person's history. And I like, I'll give you a classic taste of it. I'm not a very good singer from the community, but something like aiga ba ai kuchi raso wata wata neso, and aiga ba ai kudeso. That means his father came from here, his father did this, his father did that, and this is, so you're basically telling us the history of the bridegroom, and then you go to the girl's side. So, and through that language and through that culture, you come to know at that point in time what was there, what was happening, what kind of disaster took place. For example, in Gujarat, in Vadodara, I went there for a conference, and they have a script known as Modi script. Yes, Modi script. Now there's research being done about Modi script. Why? Because they have so much of, that Bahikatha, what is that? The financial records were done where the person lent money to people in the community. So they are looking at the script to know which year the season was bad, the farming was bad because the weather was bad. So that was their records. For us, our songs are our records. That is how we are passing on our knowledge and our language and our culture. And people should understand, when you talk about a word like snow, in or ice, in Hindi you say baraf, right? I can't think of any other word. Do you have any other word apart from baraf in Hindi? In our area you have multiple words. Why? Because when you have at a particular time, when winter is just about to set, the ice is just beginning, and then the ice gets much more, harder. Then it's a icicle, and then you have icicles that can fall from the roof and kill you because it'll hit you on your head. So you have to be that careful. So the snow in which your foot might go in, snow in which you can walk on, that's that hard. So that is why that kind of indigenous knowledge is important, especially why, for medicinal purposes. Right now all the documentation that is happening honestly is for medicinal purposes, for getting and extracting the knowledge. We need to know how to pass on that knowledge. In 75 years of India's independence, where is it that from the communities we are having the people documenting? Why isn't it that people from the community are being educated? Right? You just want to come from outside and then you want to document? No, you need to help them also to document. And you, as a linguist from outside, you can give your expertise and club with somebody from the community and make them also understand how they can do it. Because when we go as outsiders, we go for 1 week, we go for 1 month, at the maximum 2 3 months. But when you teach them how to do it, then they can do it for years and years, and they can pass it on to the community and not just to the outside world. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering that, ma'am. My last question is for Dr. Dangaura. Have you, during your research into the dynamics of Tharu folk songs, discovered specific gender roles in the preservation of indigenous vocabulary and idioms?
So as far as so I know, and in during my research tenure, and being from the same community, like there are not very specific or specialized gender roles for the women only, like to preserve some endangered vocabulary or the idioms of community. But of course, the thing is that the women of Tharu community are assigned some specific roles during performance. Like during performance, without women, so like there will be two women, and there will be one madal player. So madal player, and then madal player will be performed by a man, and then so other dancers will must have to be, let's say, women. So though like women are not especially assigned those kind of any roles, or in any kind of occasion, but so during those ritualistic performance and then other celebrations, women are supposed to be, and they are expected to perform to make the performance complete. And regarding other things, as I have already mentioned, like during the farewell of newly wedded bride, and so during and there is another instance also, like so the Tharu women, they sing a special song called Sakhya, and Sakhya is sung during the Dasai, or in India, if we take the context of India, then in India in India, like Indian like in India, people don't celebrate Dasai, but in India they celebrate what we call like what I how I forgot. There is after Dasai, what it comes in India. So uh, how I forgot, like but during that Dasai, they sing and they perform Barki Mar. The Barki Mar is Tharu people's own version of uh, Mahabharata. And during that performance and celebration, also women are must. And Barkimar, in Barkimar, like Tharu people basically have main their role of Bhima or Bhim. So Tharu people do not like prioritize other gods or like demigods, but for Tharu people, Bhim character of Mahabharata was most important. So yeah, it's like Dasai of Santhal community. So during that Dasai, Tharu people have that special dance performance called Barki Mar, and you can find it. So it and the like collected version of all those songs being translated into English was recorded by two French authors, and there is another performance like of Tharu women especially, and before like arrival of this paddy farming season, and when summer so arrives, and to mark the arrival of paddy farming season, Tharu women sing especially during that time a song called Sajna. And when they sing Sajna, like they express their emotions, they express their experiences, and they express their daily activities through that song called Sajna. And Sajna is actually basically considered as a kind of sign of arrival of summer season and paddy farming. So that's what I know it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering that, sir. With that, we come to an end to tonight's discussion. I thank each one of you for sharing your knowledge and valuable insights with us. I'm sure our audience had a wonderful time and have learned a lot as well. We are grateful to you all for taking out time from your extremely busy schedules and for being a part of this discussion. It was an absolute pleasure to have been in your company this evening. This is to remind that we are calling for submissions on tribal history and tribal representation in history, the details of which can be viewed on www.tellmeyourstory.biz. Good night, everyone.